First thing I'll do is share screen. And can everyone now see that screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to have a talk about this, and we'll just kick off. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. I am the head of department, Glasgow Caledonian University. What I'm going to be discussing tonight is some case studies from a series of projects I did where I was consulting and advising 4 other regions and city regions on, these were a design intervention, so public funding design interventions. And these cities, regions were Glasgow, which we're very familiar with, Newcastle, Northeast England, Stoke-on-Trent, North Staffordshire, and Brazil, which is clearly the natural extension to all of these places. In particular, in Brazil, it was a city called Curitiba in the state of Paraná. So overall, over a 5-year period, I had funding and I developed over 200 new products that went to market. Just out of interest, in terms of commercial success, of that, it was 43% success rate that is becoming commercially available after their completion. Don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about all 200. So, prototyping, why do it and who cares anyway? So, of course, prototyping, there's a number of reasons we would do it: testing and validation, materials selection, aesthetics, testing out processes, ergonomics, human factors, the marketplace. So there's a whole number of reasons, complex, interconnected reasons, which drives the reason for making a prototype. Typically, the process says we then modify the proposals based on what we've learned, and then it's a feedback loop. You learn something from the prototype, and then you modify your prototype in light of that learning. So what happens though if it's the wrong type of prototype? And that's precisely what we're going to talk about. Or what do we do about the prototype if it goes wrong? Creators must think really seriously about the impacts that the prototype activity may have on their proposals and the unforeseen implications of getting it wrong. There are major benefits, however, of getting it right. I mean, that's obviously, getting it right can change everything. So let's have a look at some case studies. Quentin, paper pulp luminaire. This was the designers, this was 2 young designers in Glasgow, graduated a couple of years out of college, and they had this idea for a recycled paper pulp lampshade, luminaire. And it was one standard component that you fold in 2, and then you fix them together, or you add one to the other and then fix together, and you get a double lamp. Obviously, very relevant to low temperature bulbs, wouldn't do with an old tungsten bulb. Low temperature bulbs, very contemporary for its time. And there's some of their early concept sketches. Now, what they were liking about it was the flexibility, the low cost of tooling, the fact that this paper pulp material is 100% recycled, it has to be, starts off as paper. And also you could add other things, other materials, recycled fabric, garments, etc., etc. So they really liked the idea. And they got into a prototyping phase with a company, Universal Pulp Packaging, used to be in Milton of Campsie, I believe. They may now be part of Cullen Packaging, but they were the company that was going to actually help produce these. So the first prototypes were made, and this is the first prototypes. Now, these are prototypes number 1, 2, and 3 off the tool, and actually it was a dismal failure. The designers actually, beside these photographs, they're out of shot at the moment, but they were actually in tears. because it wasn't, the components weren't working, they didn't have the aesthetic appeal, they weren't stable enough, nothing was working, and worse, the luminaires themselves, the paper pulp, was not translucent. And of course, that's what a luminaire is supposed to be. So paper pulp has been asked over the years to do quite a number of things: be cheap, be recycled, be quick to make, etc., to be mass produced. There's never been asked to be translucent. So luckily, the manufacturing company, Universal Pulp Packaging, worked together with the designers to come up with a new recipe for the paper pulp. And it involved one or two additional processing stages, and also slightly increasing the length of time to make it, but reducing the fiber size. Now, actually, the designer and the manufacturer worked together, and they registered the IP, intellectual property, on that jointly. And the result was this: translucent paper pulp, holding its tolerance, looking like it does in the drawings, and actually being sold around the world, winning competitions for environmentally friendly design. These products were sold, the components were bought from the manufacturing company for £1 each. Now, for the company, this was amazing, because they were normally under pressure to make these products at £1,000 for £1. So the cost level for the company was just quite remarkable, changed their whole market opportunity, and that product was very successful. As I say, awarded prizes and awards around the world. They also went on to develop its big brother product, which is a table lamp, using exactly the same process. And that one didn't make it to production. I can't remember now why, but it didn't make it any further than the hanging luminaire. So that was one, and that in there. So therein lies, one of the stories, that the prototype was carried out in good faith, went wrong, but it was the manufacturer who stepped in to help the whole thing, understanding what they were trying to do, and in fact developed new intellectual property along the way. And now we're going to look at the Tyne bicycle, an urban cycleway product. The Tyne bike was a project to help tourists who were coming to the northeast of England. So it was to help them hire a bicycle that would be robust, that would be easy to maintain, secure, modern, and give the tourists an opportunity to hire an easy, rideable bicycle. Also, very many opportunities for branding. So you can see these prototypes. I'm just going to flick backwards, forwards, and through them. You can see these prototypes are very much looking at very traditional drawings, digital prototypes here, looking at shape, form, colors, branding, how you would use it in the environment, a charging section and higher section. It was done for the potential 2008 year of culture that they were hoping to win in Gateshead and Newcastle. And this is great. And here we see more sophisticated digital prototyping, looking at it in various locations, various configurations. This is alongside the Tyneside. This is Banbury Castle. So all, so far, so good. And it looked great. But it wasn't until a certain event happened that really changed everything. And this is the event I'm talking about. All of the prototyping, all of the digital prototyping was great. It really helped prove the process, prove the products. But this is the leader of Gateshead City Council. And this is the leader of Newcastle City Council. And they are riding on prototypes that work like they're supposed to, look like they're supposed to in every way. These are fully functioning, classic prototype, working prototypes. These two guys made the decision on the keyway there and then to proceed with the product. So all of the prototyping, all of the justification, all of the examining was fine, but it wasn't until this happened that these two guys had the power and they made the decision there and then based on a 500-meter bicycle ride up and down the quay to make it happen, and they did. Outdoor luminaire. This is a project for Hamden Football Ground when it was being redeveloped as a Millennium project, and they wanted some iconic, new, modern design of outdoor lighting that would actually benefit the community in some way, give a nice appearance, make the place safe. We know how important lighting, safe lighting is in urban environments, and also easy to maintain, etc., etc. So there's some of the original sketches for this thing. The idea is that you can see here the inner tube, the inner column, actually has the light source at the bottom, making it easy to change, and the light reflects all the way up the inside of the tube, focused by a lens onto a reflecting dish, and then gives a nice ambient light down the way. The idea of the product was that you had to have signage, you could have bannering for whoever was playing or attending at Hamden Football Ground, and that was again also good. Again, digital prototyping. There's an idea of how it would look at night. So here is a working prototype, the original working prototype in the Philips Lighting Factory in Lyon, where the headquarters of Philips Lighting are based. And that's an image of the light just there. So that's the very first prototype 001. What was the ideal thing there was that wasn't a technical director, it wasn't a managing director or anything from Hamden, it was a marketing director who was there, and they made the decision based on that visit that these lights would now go ahead. And here they are at Hamden, designed in Glasgow, made, elements of it are made in Glasgow, certainly located in Glasgow, still there today, and is a Millennium product winner as well. They weren't cheap, they weren't the lowest cost possible product, but they did create exactly what Hamden wanted, and they are still there today as our people use them as meeting places for after the game, etc., etc. So, the smoke detector for the Royal National Institute for the Deaf. So obviously people with hearing disabilities. There are smoke detectors, obviously clearly a standard smoke detector giving us a standard alarm isn't enough in some conditions. So there are smoke detectors which have a louder noise, which have flashing lights, which have vibration pads, all sorts of other indications to alert the person that they have some problem and they should leave the house immediately. The problem with a lot of these products, extremely difficult to use. It can be stigmatizing because it could, if, shall we say, an undesirable notices that you've got one of these things, they then know that you've got a hearing disability and they might come back later. And also the control panels are very difficult to use. So what the RNID were wanting was something that modern, contemporary, added all the added functionality, and especially on the controlling unit. So here are some early sketches of it. And these are, for anyone who's in the business of product design and design engineering, these are perfectly understandable elevations, drawing elevations of the various, of the product in various views. So you can see that that's the whole shape, form, that's the back. We're looking here at the back edge of it, fixing holes, etc., etc. This is how you would change a battery. Different configurations, wall mounted or tabletop. And this is a little instruction panel. And just, so this was a pull-out instruction panel, something that had never been worked into, a very simple idea. You can't pull it out, you can just, you can't remove it from the product, you can just pull it out to read it. But just as a check as to how to reset things and what do all these indicators mean. So at the decision, this is a general arrangement drawing. And to anyone who's ever been involved in product design, very simple, very familiar with this sort of thing. This is the case wall thickness, the central pull-out device, the battery. This green thing, green element here represents the circuit board. And here we can see a top view circuit board down here. Very straightforward. However, the Royal National Institute for the Deaf were meeting to discuss whether they should proceed with this product. Were faced with this image. And this was actually by accident, this is all they got. So the trouble was with this image, while it's perfectly informative to those people if you're in the know and you're understanding what it is, to this committee of people, they just didn't understand it. Quite simply, didn't understand it. So if you're in that position, looking after a trust, as we all know what it's like to look after a trust fund, they were going to make the safest decision they could. So in their view, as they didn't understand it, the safest decision was to cancel the project, stop everything. So while the chairman of the committee was writing to the design company to say, I'm afraid the project's been cancelled, a parcel arrived for the chairman. And in the parcel was this. And this is nothing more than an MDF, sorry, let me go back, an MDF painted model. It doesn't do anything. This doesn't work. All it does do is give a three-dimensional, size for size, looks like impression of what the product would be. Now, this was immediately understandable, immediately, and this changed everything. And within half an hour, the committee had been reassembled. They looked at this model and immediately reversed their decision and go ahead. So the problem here was the right prototype got to eventually the right people, but it got there at the wrong time. So it could have been a disaster. However, thankfully, it was saved. The project was saved. Going the wrong way, sorry. This is a digital hand drum. And this, although it looks like many things to many people, including a deep fat fryer, etc., is actually a digital hand drum. So it's played exactly as a hand drum would be played by hitting the skin here, is digital, so you can tune each of the zones of the hand drum. You can tune these little rubber prongs. You can tune this area, fine tuning, and this is where you fine tune and bring in other digital sample sounds. And this is a record button. So you could lay down some rhythm, record it, and then play over it. So multi-track, digital recorded hand drum. We took this project from a very basic final year product design student in Glasgow School of Art, and we provided him with funding to make it work. Based on his estimations, he actually made that drum work, fully operational, looking like that. He made 2 of them for the prototype. Fantastic prototype, really did a tremendous job and turned a great deal of attention on him. So much so that he was requested to come to some meetings in London with Yamaha and Roland. These are 2 different companies who specialize in musical instruments and in particular digital musical instruments. What they loved about this prototype was their digital drums up until that time had been basically a black box with some pads that you hit with sticks, whereas this was a funky, unusual product full of character, worked fantastically well, gave all the performance that was wanted, and they were very impressed with it. And they wanted to meet with the designer to offer him a license, to look at a forward-going contract, to see how the business could move on, buy it from him. They were looking for any options at all as to progress this. Well, our mistake in this project, we were at this time, I was still working with the project, leading the project. We allowed him to go to that meeting alone. He didn't really tell us that the meeting was happening. And essentially, he exposed himself. He was completely out of his depth to a point of being scared. He was nervous, cautious, to a point of being scared of the commitment, the amount of funding that was going to go into it, the amount of money he was going to get, and he essentially got scared off. He didn't like the corporate image, he didn't like the big business, and he was just concerned about it. So after the event, when we found out about it, we tried to give him a lot of support in terms of intellectual property, management support, financial support, to help him make this happen. Unfortunately, he had what would you say on it? He had just decided it wasn't for him. And he extricated himself from all advice, all input, and he was never heard of again. So while it was a fantastic product, it was a fantastic prototype, it was a fantastic opportunity, what went wrong here is that we too quickly impressed global businesses who were very interested in it, and we didn't have him prepared well enough, and we didn't support him at the right time with the support he required. And he intellectually just didn't want to continue. So what must we do with prototyping? So prototype regularly, making sure that we maximize the impact, use every possible technology available, proceed as if the work will be opened at the highest level of scrutiny. Don't let prototypes be misinterpreted, and always keep control. Ensure that prototyping is an essential component of design and process, not a one-off luxury. The right prototype can reduce the gap between concept and reality and really make new things happen. The wrong prototype can reduce the overall confidence and make the whole thing irretrievable. And for that, what you need to see in the companies, what you need to see in the individuals involved, you need everybody to have some mix of these 4 things. Believe it or not, I've actually written academic papers on these. I know Gordon has often quoted some of my academic papers, but I have written on this topic that you need a mix of passion, perseverance, patience, and proactivity. It works well in English. Not every language has the same alliteration with that, though, I can tell you. So, just for the avoidance of doubt, that's me, and you can get me at that email address. Thank you very much. I'll be happy to take any questions. Let me just stop sharing and come back to the screen.